It's not really a secret that Destiny has been struggling lately. Bungie's constantly continuing behavior of just shooting themselves in the foot over and over again whenever they make an actually good change has sort of built up in a way, and that resulted in just the utter disaster that was the Portal, as well as several other changes made with the launch of the Edge of Fate, and those have caused player numbers to drop well below the Curse of Osiris numbers. So, because of this, it seems kind of obvious Bungie doesn't really know what they're doing or really just how to actually make changes that satisfy the rather large player base. However, I think I do know what to do. Now, I obviously can't speak for everyone, but I do think that these changes would overall satisfy the majority of the player base and somewhat save the game, or at least long enough for Bungie to figure out how to get new players into the game. But before we get into that, I would like to ask you to like, share, comment any ideas on how you can improve on how I can improve my videos, and subscribe, as it would genuinely mean a lot to me and it helps me in the algorithm. Now for the first change. Nobody really likes the portal, so just throw it away. It's a mess that somehow manages to feel cluttered and yet empty simultaneously. I do have a video explaining all of my issues with the portal. I'll link that in the description if you want to watch it and see why I feel this way about it. I mean, you could probably somehow manage to turn the portal into a hub for featured content like the weekly featured raid, dungeon, pinnacle activities somehow, I guess. If you do really, if for some reason you really do want to keep it, but I don't really think like it would work that way. I don't know, but maybe somebody could figure out how to make it work, I guess. I would also just completely revert the power changes. While yes, the previous system wasn't perfect and it was a bit tedious, just constantly grinding out, like the regulars and the powerfuls and the pinnacles, I still feel like it was a lot better than this current system. Plus, just the fact that loot is tied to your power level just absolutely sucks. And like, because for some reason, it's not at all tied to like the difficulty of the content you're playing, which makes absolutely no sense. And yeah, I know that Bungie is fixing it, but I'm gonna be honest, I still don't like it at all. It is a deeply flawed system, and the game would benefit a lot more if, instead of constantly just using up time to try and fix it, they just scrapped it, went back to how it previously was, and used that time to actually develop new content. While we're at it, just kill New Gear. I don't like it. I don't think anybody really likes it. I know it's to incentivize using new gear, but it just being straight up better in every single way than my current gear just sucks, and it feels like I'm being punished for not grinding out new stuff. Now, loot tiers. Loot tiers, loot tiers, loot tiers. I would remove weapon tiers. They did result in like sunsetting 99% of the game, so it is pretty obvious that they do need to go. Plus, we already had something like weapon tiers with adept weapons, which were a better version of legendary weapons. So, at least to me, it doesn't really make sense that Bungie would basically abandon adept weapons in favor of a stupid tiering system. Armor tiers, however, I do like. I would keep them, as they do feel much more like an actual natural evolution of the current armor system. The new stats are good. I like the idea of armor gradually getting more and more stats as you complete more difficult content, which does feel, again, like I said, a natural evolution of the armor system. Speaking of the armor system, I would also revert the mod system to how it was pre-Lightfall. They completely gutted it in the name of like accessibility or simplicity or some dumb thing like that. But as a result, mods just, I'm gonna be honest, they feel kind of useless. I just end up taking the same like the same couple ones all for like every single build. And something like the old heavy-handed is a lot more interesting because using it correctly would allow you to basically use your special weapon as your primary weapon, which is a lot more fun than pick up an orb to deal like 5% more damage. Now, to further expand on weapons, I would bring back weapon crafting. I know it's a pretty controversial system because a lot of like veteran players feel like it kills the loot chase and trivializes it. So I would make it so that crafted weapons could not get enhanced perks. That way, you could still get good rolls and weapons easily, but if you do like truly want the strongest weapon, you would still need to grind it out. I decided to do this so that casual players would still be able to get good rolls if for some reason they weren't able to spend a lot of time in the game and feel like their time was being wasted or whatever. And hardcore players would have something to grind for, and also feel like that good weapons just aren't being handed out freely. I feel like this is the best way that I could at least come up with to satisfy both parties. I also do want to expand on adept weapons because previously, I'm going to be honest, at least to me, they just didn't really feel worth it at all. And to make these the best of the best weapons that you can possibly get, aside from exotics, obviously, I would give them the properties of tier 5 weapons so that hopefully they would feel like they are worth grinding out since they're like truly unique, with like all enhanced magazines, barrels, stocks, perks, whatever. And because this does affect all adept weapons that would currently exist, since it affects adept weapons, it wouldn't result in like half the game being sunset. I would I would for sure keep shiny weapons. I really like that. I feel like that is a good addition to the loot chase. And maybe Bungie if it's like possible or whatever, they could give every weapon a shiny variant somehow, to like I said, incentivize the loot grind. There is also a kind of big issue that I do want to touch on, and it's that once a new expansion is released, everything from the previous expansion is just kind of irrelevant, honestly. To fix that, I would introduce a sort of featured expansion mechanic where every week a legacy expansion is featured, making it so that all content released in that year of that expansion has increased drops, grants pinnacle rewards. Every lost sector will have a master variant, and shiny weapons would have an increased drop rate. This way, hopefully, it'll breathe some life into older content and make it feel useful, and also, give us a reason to use patrol spaces. They made every single vendor in the tower kind of useless, so I would revert them to how they were pre Edge of Fate. They were in a perfectly fine state too, so I don't really understand why Bungie couldn't have just changed them. Like just make it so Zavala is tied to like Fire Team, Solo, and Pinnacle Ops. Make it so that Shaxx is tied to Crucible Ops. So I don't know, kill the Drifter because he's kind of useless. Since lore-wise, there is no reason for us to do Gambit. I I just don't understand why they had to make vendors just useless. It was just a really good system that they scrapped for absolutely no reason. Just like Pathfinder, which I would also bring back. Because again, they could have easily made it work in the portal, but I guess Bungie was just lazy and decided to throw it out. Bungie would also need to put a larger focus on the core playlists. If I'm gonna be honest, they were like kind of abandoned. Crucible like got no new maps, no new modes. Gambit is just it's the child that they just abandoned. And Strikes didn't they got the most stuff, but it was like only once a year with every single new expansion, just a single strike, which is not enough to keep them feeling fresh. They need to keep on adding more stuff. Just add more and more, like give us strike specific loot, just do them how they were in Destiny 1. Because while I may have never played Destiny 1, I know for a fact that strikes were much better back then. Remove the challenge card as well. People are just going to always select the easiest modifiers, so there's really no reason to keep it in. Esoteric made an entire video explaining its issues, so I'm going to link down in the description. Go check that out if you want to see more insight into it or something. Also, delete champions. Just kill them, throw them in a ditch, shoot them in the head. Nobody likes them, and there is nothing that you can do to make us like them. We do not like having a certain loadout pretty much forced upon us because of these stupid things. If there's anti-barrier scout rifle, and there's a barrier champion, I don't want to run a scout rifle. I hate scout rifles. I would much rather run something like a submachine gun or a rocket pulse, something that I actually want to use. And yeah, I know that somebody else on the fire team could use a scout rifle, but that still doesn't fix the issue of certain loadouts being pretty much forced upon us. Now, I do want to touch on renegades. Please, Bungie, do not make this a norm for future expansions. I don't want I do not want you constantly ripping off other things just to get us to play the game. I don't want Star Wars. I want Destiny. I don't want Helldivers 2. I want Destiny. Alright, now we're getting into the zone of Bungie's not going to add these. There's no way Bungie's going to add these, but it would be really nice if they did. So don't even expect a single one of these changes to be made. Well, I get none of these changes are probably going to be made because Bungie's lazy, but these have a much, much, much lower chance of happening than all the stuff I listed previously. The current seasonal model, if you can even call it that, sucks balls. So I would bring back the old one, the one from Forsaken. I know Bungie doesn't really have the manpower to do it, so if they do end up reverting back to it, at the very least, it would have to be after Marathon launches. Plus, since Bungie is owned by Sony, they could probably just work with the other studios there. They should at least bring back every piece of vaulted content. I know that that is a really big wish, but the story right now is incredibly just like disjointed and it makes no sense thanks to sunsetting. I love sunsetting, Bungie! I also know that the storage space required would increase massively, so maybe Bungie could make it so you could uninstall some of the seasons or expansions to free up space, kind of like how you could uninstall the campaigns for COD. And now you're also probably asking, where are they going to throw it all? There's no way the director could fit all that. I want you to direct your eyes to this little yellow dot up above on the director, the thing called Legends. We already have legacy raids there, so why not just throw all the other legacy stuff in there as well? And since we are talking about bringing back content, we could just port all the D1 content into D2 while we're at it as well. So that way the full Light and Darkness saga is playable for new players so that, they aren't confused as to what the hell is going on. And since we're talking about D1, a return to the D1 aesthetic and tone would be very nice, as the darker tone would fit the world of Destiny much more than whatever writing we have now. And to touch more on bringing back the Destiny 1 stuff, they could just bring it back slowly, kind of like how they previously released, like the Legacy raids or whatever. They could just release, say, I don't know, like an expansion, like in the middle of like the two expansions or whatever, I don't know though. Maybe they could just remaster it all at once and just release like some like legacy bundle. I know that would have to suck. I know that would suck having to rebuy all of them, but that's probably what they're going to do if they do end up porting all the campaigns into Destiny 2 for some reason. Completely rework Gambit too if you are going to keep it. So just because it sucks right now, just rework it completely. And lastly, stop focusing on Eververse. Put the stuff into the game to let us earn it. Please, Bungie. I would actually want to grind out cosmetic ornaments. I know it's crazy, but that is something that I would want to do. And that is every change I would feel like I would make to save Destiny. If you agree with me, if you don't, please leave that in the comments. Anyways, that's the video. See you later. Bye.